There are a lot of implications in the idea of this universe being a virtual reality. The term virtual reality has been around since the 1950s, when the first thoughts or experiments or developments led to ways of trying to create sensory experience visually or in other ways that mimicked our idea of reality anyway, the experience of reality, obviously primitive at first. This led to things like the early flight simulators and so on. This kind of thing that gave an experience of spatial distribution, relating it to our capacity to locate things and arrange things in a three-dimensional basis. The virtual reality game is like a more an extension of the concept of virtual reality. This is an actual creation designed to give the user of it some form of experience, but with the interaction of the user into the events taking place in the game, and with some form of feedback that correlates inputs to outputs and so on. Now, I became aware, started writing about virtual reality as an idea when I first got into the higher state of consciousness in around 1992. So by 1993, I was using this term in what I was doing and thinking. And it over the years, it is caught up with the mainstream science. So I've heard people like Professor Brian Cox referring to virtual reality simulation, that's what we could be in. But I don't believe that, as far as I'm aware, that mainstream science has really thought about the implications of us being in a simulation, because I think that all that they do and all that their research is, their theories, virtually everything. I mean, I'm not speaking from a thorough knowledge. I'm only saying the impression I get is that they have never really considered the implications of that virtual reality game for the way that our reality works. So that the reality they study is the actual simulation and not the consciousness or the mechanisms or the purposes of what underlies or what creates that virtual reality experience. Now, that's situation likely to go on almost indefinitely, because all of the systems we create have some fundamental basis or set of rules that they used when being founded that control essentially the information that they deal with and handle. The systems are really mechanisms for control rather than for exploration or liberation. They're there to prevent things being happening. So the way science works is that it's based on certain fundamental ideas or beliefs that govern what is permissible research and what isn't. So the idea that this material reality is exactly what it seems, that it is a material reality, and that anything that is not measurable does not exist. So of course, consciousness isn't measurable, so doesn't exist. We can rule out consciousness as a factor, but unfortunately, consciousness doesn't know this, and it continues to create our virtual reality game system simulation all the time, and is unlikely to be affected by pronouncements from physical societies and university professors, so on. So the simulation, as far as I am aware of it at this time, because my ideas are constantly evolving and developing, and everything moves forward. But the way I see it at the moment is that the purpose of consciousness is for the oneness to come to understand and know itself, and to explore the possibilities that arise from the idea of the implicate order. The implicate order being the theoretical or imaginary existence of a state of not light. Shadow is not light. Coldness is not heat. So, and we go into all of these are opposites of, but they're not versions. So this is how the simulation is created. But what it does is it allows elements of consciousness, entities, we can call them. Well, by entity, I don't mean something from a horror film. I mean anything self-contained or whole that the universe holds information about. So an entity, we are entities. The planet is an entity. The galaxy is an entity. Anything that can be designated by the number one is an entity. And what it consists of is information created and stored in patterns based on the idea of the number one in the shadow space. But remembering that the shadow space is purely theoretical, has no separate existence of its own. So what happens is that there is the total field of, or no, field, because a field is a distribution. We're talking about a state. The state of light has a point that represents each individual. You, for example, here, which creates an imaginary pattern of experience based on quantum digital information created, or well, functioning within the shadow state through points of light. So you are essentially a point of shadow in the light, which defines the whole of the light from your perspective, from your point of view, and it siphons off a bit of its light into the shadow to create an imaginary being that is you as a finite entity composed of information designated by a single number one. The same one that makes us all. That's why all is one. It's because there is only one. There's nothing else. Right. So the simulation enables us to exist and function in this virtual reality game, which I call the action game, because the actions are what we do. We're here on this level. On this level, our purpose is to be. On this level, our purpose is to do. So here we're doing things. doing things means undertaking actions, and the actions are what we do here. Anything that we do is an action if it results in a transfer of information or a change of state of any kind over here. So when you undertake an action, it has consequences, and it also involves an experience of some kind. Now that is what the universe uses, the entire system of numbers to record. So that here it's information based, here it's essence based, it's meaning based. Now the whole thing, because all ideas are dependent on all other ideas for their existence and definition, no idea, no concept can have a separate existence away from everything else, because everything is part of the oneness. So everything that is one has a purpose, a role, and undertakes or is involved in actions of some kind. But it fulfills a story. It would be counterproductive for existence to be random, as science tends to think it is. Science sees everything starting at some point in the past, moving through time, and everything that happens is a result of causal linearity or causal mechanisms. So it's a bit like the game of billiards or snooker. You know, you hit one ball, it hits another one, knocks that way, so on and so forth. The process is purely linear, and it can be traced back from the origin, from the first play of the first ball at the beginning of the game, all the way through to the end of the game. That process, it can be could be theoretically anyway, if as recorded in the universe, is a linear chain of cause and effect. Now, what that isn't the way it works in practice, because if you take something like a world snooker championship, there's a whole other side to a game of snooker. Otherwise there wouldn't be anything for commentators to talk about. So, because commentators make a lot out of very little when it comes to sport, and they can talk for hours about nothing. When with nothing happening, they're very good at talking about things. Well, yes. Anyway, won't go into that. So, but the point is that the winner of the game is predetermined by other circumstances that have nothing to do with Newton's laws of gravity and motion. The winner is whoever is going to win. See, because all the events that happen in time are moving towards a foregone conclusion. So that foregone conclusion works backwards through time to create the story that leads us from origin to final destination. In fact, we never leave our origin. Our main origin is in here. That's where we exist with any degree of reality. So the game is a drama, a dream, a drama, a play, an education, a school, all these terms. This is what it is. It's for consciousness to learn about itself, and by using ideas based on mathematics, and to experience those ideas and translate that experience into everyday life. From our point of view, you know, what we are experiencing in this virtual reality game is this reality as we perceive it is purely fictional. It's all part of this drama, the game. Now, what happens then is that the game is moving towards a foregone conclusion. So events and opportunities arise that move us in that never-ending direction. It's not a direction in any literal sense. It's a direction in a subjective meaning sense. So what happens is that the events of the game for the individual are part of a much greater purpose that serves the needs of oneness to learn and gain knowledge of itself. So, you know, we are not the individuals we think we are. We are all part of one space. Now, I use the analogy of half a dozen people standing in front of a camera and being filmed and projected onto a computer screen, a television or whatever. So you'll see the 6 people there appearing to be separate from each other and independent in their formation, but there is only one screen. So how can they be independent and separate if they're all portrayed on one screen? So you see that's an illusion for a start. The idea, our existence as separate beings is purely illusory. We are part of, we call it a space-time continuum. I would question the validity of that term now, but anyway, you know, we are all part of one system of existence, and we are not separate. We are only separate in the way we are portrayed and experience ourselves in the game. So the drama is leading us on. We are playing these roles, but we are not the role. We experience the role, but we are something far greater, and as something infinite. We are not really here at all. We are dreaming this experience in a state. It's a mathematically structured dream. And what's going on is that consciousness tends to push ideas, it's evolving ideas and concepts in the possibilities of human behavior. Now, human behavior has certain characteristics, and that they reflect in the, if you know about there are centers of consciousness in the vehicle we inhabit that relate to the projection of a form into space and time. So we have, they're called chakras, but I think of them as centers of consciousness, but they each have a theme. So, you know, if you start at the base chakra, it's physicality. You move up, you've got sexuality, emotion, heart, feelings, and so on. And then consciousness, of communication, the throat chakra. And then in the brain, we've got the finite objective mind, the consciousness of the finite mind, our ability to think, which to me is simply just another sense. And, you know, hearing, touch, sound, and so on. Thinking is just one of those senses. It's not a big deal in itself. Our real capacity to think, it goes via the pineal gland. We have access to a higher state of existence in the chakra that's above the head, right? Above the head, there is this state of existence that is really associates with the light and oneness and all the rest of it. Now, but what that means is that we think that we are in control of our bodies and our lives, and we are, we wake up each day, we've got things we have to do, we've got choices we have to make, and eventually the day ends, go to sleep and so on, go round and round, we wake up, go through all that again. But not really. At no time are we behaving spontaneously or even outside our programming, because we are programmed beings. We've come here with a set of parameters and a personality, a character. All these are all fixed at conception, and not all conceived beings, entities, come to term, who are actually born and become human beings, for example. But the ideas that we meet and we come up with, in every pulse of time, every entity within the system that we belong to, and even possibly even beyond the system we belong to, all the entities are in some way defining each other. So, if you are you're part of humanity, for example, what defines one human being is the nature of every other human being currently alive and working and living within the system. So nobody has their own existence except as everybody else defines them. That's a bit subtle, but it's true. Our entire existence, and in fact every moment of our lives, has to take into account what everybody else is doing at this time. We do not function as individuals in the real sense. We're not. You could go to bed, do nothing forever, wake up the next day, everything will have changed, whether you mean it to or not, because everything interacts. So the entire course of history, as we could call it history, the drama, the game, the unfolding story, it's all part of a pattern that we ride. Like it's like a fairground. You sit on the big wheel, you're on the big wheel's going round, somebody else is controlling the rate at which the wheel goes round, lets you on and off and all that. Well, it's a bit like that. We get on the big wheel when we're helped on, and then when we die we're helped off, and whatever state we're in at that time. But at no time are we our greater infinite self. We are purely the character, the role, going through its time here, believing it's in control of what it's doing, but in reality we're just experiencing this thing. And you are free to make choices, you are free to act, you have freedom of in action, but you are constrained in your actions by your state of consciousness. You can't think of something that you don't have the capacity to think of, that your consciousness cannot encompass or comprehend. And you behave in any situation according to the character, the role that you've been given at conception. This is how you are, this is how you live. So you don't really have that much freedom or choice. And in fact, the drama, the play, is going forward, and we are simply along for the ride. Now, that does not mean that we do not have free will, or that we do not have some other mechanism for changing things. That is the problem, in a sense, is that we don't know that we can change things. Nobody would, in their right minds, accept this planet, this state of existence as it is, in the way it's presented to us. When I say presented, I mean, most of what we know about the world now comes through things like this. This is our interaction with the world. This is what more or less, where we once were part of nature, we're not. We're living in houses, and we're in buildings and structure, and there is a push to have us almost entirely functioning online, as in a virtual reality within a virtual reality. Anyway, there we go. So the game is unfolding, and the game is now going to change and move into a totally new level of play. And the simulation is going to bring forward events and situations that will lead us to that state in a way that we have virtually no control over. But that does not mean it cannot be better. Who would want to live in, supposing you created a virtual reality experience and a game, what would you want to see in it? Well, would it be poverty? Would it be nuclear weapons? Would it be warfare? Would it be pollution? If you sat down to design a game of existence like this one, would you create a game that works like this one does, that we inhabit, where people control our lives, people tell us where we can drive, where we can park, what we're allowed to view or read, what we're allowed to say? This isn't the game we would choose to create. So how come it exists? Well, it exists because we've been passengers for too long without really taking any notice about who we are and what we're doing. Our existence is to glorify the oneness, the light, the consciousness, and to discover all the positive aspects. Well, in creating the virtual reality game, the positive aspects are all happening here, and in the shadow is all the negative aspects, the suffering, the pain, the things that we do. Now, all that could change if people said, from now on, I am going to try to do the right thing, where the right thing is any action, any attitude, anything to do that supports oneness, love, us being a community, us being together, which is, of course, excludes almost every job, because almost every job people undertake requires them to do things that work against the oneness. Traffic warden, you parked here, we'll stick a ticket on you, we'll charge you, and so on. Or the park keeper, you can't play with that ball in this park, go away. And it's all about rules. It's all about enforcing rules, because quantum digital information is essentially mathematical, and mathematics is rule-based. So this world is an opportunity to create rules that constrict and confine and control. That's what it's all about. And it goes on because nobody steps back and says, do we really need this? Do we really need to live like this? There's more than enough food for everybody. Well, why aren't we all getting it? Why? Because we are in a value-based consciousness instead of meaning-based, that everything revolves around value. And the epitome of value, as it translates into this dimension, is money. And money is non-existent. It's in fact, we're finding that now with the digital thing, noughts in a computer. You've got a lot of noughts, you're wealthy. Hardly any, you're not. But there is no such, it's just noughts and ones. They could be switched off. That would be the end of it. So that happened recently. There was what they call an outage, breakdown of digital communications in a lot of areas of existence around many parts of the world. And it showed how dependent we are on these systems and how nothing works if they're switched off. But that applies equally to this entire state of existence. This is a quantum digital system processing information and creating experience. The story isn't happening here. The story is happening here in the light. Now, if we collectively said, we don't want this anymore, we don't want to live like this, because there are always going to be people who benefit from the system, from the status quo, and will always push and control. Do I have to name all the billionaires who run the planet and have untold wealth and power, but who are committing spiritual suicide? They are choosing to use their free will, such as it is, to harm others and to gain value at their expense, our expense. They're headed for at best, suffering and shadow, darkness, and at worst, oblivion. Because God, if you believe in God, I never use the word because I find it very unhelpful. It's got, oneness has a meaning. One has a meaning. Love has a meaning. God is just a three-letter word that has been given so many interpretations that it's not very helpful. But if we say God is love, then that is the essence of everything good, and that's what we are here learning and experiencing. So we need to take love as our principal objective in living our lives, to create an experience and share love. But love, I'm talking about beneficial activity. I'm not talking about relationships here. Obviously they come into it, but sex is not love. It can be, but as we're seeing increasingly from various aspects of the social media, that what people choose to do to obtain pleasure has virtually nothing to do with love and has everything to do with ego. And the ego is the problem as far as most of the difficulties in the world are concerned. So that will do for now. There'll be more to say on this on another video. Thank you.